Welcome everyone to the Q&A session for our upcoming course, the Radiant Lotus Qigong Practice for Women. The 7-week journey to discover live practices for your healing, balance, and empowerment. I'm Lisa Bonise, and it's my honor to be hosting this Q&A conversation for the Shift Network, where we'll explore the teachings of Daisy Lee and address questions about her upcoming 7-week course, the Radiant Lotus Qigong Practice for Women, which begins Tuesday, July 10th. Later, I'll explain how you can participate in this course, even if you can't attend the live sessions, but first, I want to introduce our guest. Daisy Lee is a respected leader in the Qigong world with more than 20 years of teaching experience. She's certified as a Level 3 Advanced Qigong Instructor and Clinical Practitioner by the National Qigong Association of America, as well as being a past board member of the International Qigong Science Association in Beijing. She lectures and conducts workshops and instructor trainings internationally with a specialty in women's health. Her signature program, Radiant Lotus Qigong, is now taught in 13 countries. Her accompanying DVD series, Beginner Qigong for Women 1 and 2 and Qigong for Women, became bestsellers within the first month of their release. And in just a few minutes, we're going to open up for your questions. But first, I want to welcome Daisy, who's going to begin our call by leading us in a centering practice. Welcome, Daisy. It's wonderful to be with you again.
Hello, Lisa, and hello, everyone. It's great to be back. I'd like to share with you the centering practice with a visualization. And if you are wanting to close your eyes, you can do so. Centering practices essentially bring us back into ourself and into our self-awareness so that we don't, you could say, get splintered with distractions in the outside world. So please feel comfortable to close your eyes. And I'll guide you through this visualization. We start at the bottom of our feet. If your feet are flat on the ground, just wiggle and feel comfortable in your chair. Or if you're standing, you can also just roll your shoulders and let them drop back. And you want to relax your feet into the earth. In your mind's eye, all the points of your feet that touch the earth connect like the roots of a great tree deep into the earth. And there's a point between the two balls of the feet called the kidney one, or the bubbling spring. And you see this point on each foot open in your mind's eye. And see energy from the heart of the earth meeting these points and rising up through your legs, filling up the torso with light. Continuing this energy upwards, flowing into the organs, and especially into the heart center, where women are considered most strong when we're in balance. From here, we say and send the energy through the throat to open up our authentic voice and rise through the face, bringing light to the face and eyes. And see this light open the third eye, or the upper dantian, and opening the mind to new ideas and inspiration. Continuing out through the portal of the Bai Hui point at the very crown of the head. See this light continue upwards to touch a star in the sky. And that star represents your highest self, filled with potential, and its potential realized on this level, in this earth plane. From the light of that star, shower this light all around and down through the body, back into the earth, encircling the body and rising up through the midline once again, into the heart center. And now you can open your eyes and just feel your presence, feel your centeredness as you sit or stand on this earth. And have an understanding of your peace on this earth and how we can emanate that, radiate it, and not only support ourselves but others on this path of self-healing. When we heal ourselves and open up our energy to be of great service, then we can support others in their healing. And that is really what this program, this Radiant Lotus Qigong path is about, is that we can only really greatly serve others if we first take care of ourselves. So Radiant Lotus Qigong is a self-care practice for women of all ages, especially starting from the time of menstruation and going through the pregnancy years into our wisdom years, our second spring. And in China, we call the second spring our menopause years. I think it's a better analogy because we start to understand how the opportunity is to really embrace the second part of our lives. So many people, women, they may feel like, oh, they're growing old, and the things of youth start to not actually. They either become too important because you're losing it, or if you're in balance, you see the value of this merging into your second spring, when you've grown enough and lived through enough to have greater wisdom, so that you can advise those that come to you. And I say those that come to you because sometimes we'll also not be so discerning and not will want to offer advice when it's not called for or asked for, and then our effectiveness is not so great. And so this is part of the path of Radiant Lotus Qigong, is to heal our bodies first, to gain a better understanding of our emotions and how to manage them so that we're in balance, and how to increase the emotional intelligence as well as the greater wisdom that emanates out into the world. So it's a program that does many things, and I hope that when we go through this hour that you'll have your questions answered, so that you'll understand how to better take care of yourself through these movements, through the breath practices, and also through the Tibetan sound healing that is also part of this 7-week program. So I think it would be best to hand it over to Lisa so that she can, present the questions that you have to me so I can best serve you in this hour. Thank you, Lisa.
Well, thank you, Daisy. That was a short yet very, very powerful centering practice. I certainly appreciated it. And now we have the rest of our time together to dive into our viewer's question for Daisy as we prepare for her upcoming course. Again, that's called the Radiant Lotus Qigong Practice for Women, and it begins Tuesday, July 10th. And if you want to check out the website and learn more about the 7-week course, you can visit qigongforwomen.net, and that's spelled Qigong for women.net. And that's where you'll see the full description, and you can register if you'd like. So let's go ahead and get started with questions. If you have a question for Daisy, go ahead and type it in. I'll be happy to read it out loud. In the meantime, we got some questions here, but I'd actually like to ask the first one. Daisy, you mentioned at the very start, just in passing, that women are considered strongest in the heart center. Can you elaborate on that? That really piqued my interest.
Well, our breasts give life. And even if we don't have children, this area of the body is meant to give life, to nourish life. So what we mean by that is that when women are in balance, their emotions are in balance, their heart and mind, or heart-mind is in balance, then everything emanates from this place. And if we have really enough self-love and are given that in our lives, then we can more freely share what is available in terms of our resources. And so they call this area the middle dantian, and which is the heart center where life begins. You could say we call the womb the heart below the horizon, which is also, of course, the life center where we're containing life. But this also, from the center of the chest, is this offering of life to those that we love and our communities that we care for. Does that make sense, Lisa? That why even anatomically this is true, but also emotionally this is incredibly true.
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much for that. I certainly appreciate that explanation. And we do have some questions coming in from viewers, so let's go ahead and get into those.
Okay.
For example, Kathleen, this is a pretty basic question. Just wants to know, how does Radiant Lotus differ from other forms of Qigong?
Okay, Kathleen and everyone. The Radiant Lotus practice is very specifically geared towards women's hormonal health. Not only hormonal, because we need to balance the hormones in order to create balance in other parts of our lives, but the emotional balance creates also hormonal balance. When we open up the channels of the body, the energy channels, the meridians or energy pathways of the body, then this energy can flow freely throughout the organs, throughout the whole energetic and physical system of women. What makes it different is that we're not only doing regular Qigong, which is beneficial to everyone, but there is a greater emphasis on nurturing our breasts, nurturing our reproductive organs, because this is often where stagnation can become kind of like a traffic jam in our bodies when we're not taking care of ourselves, whether it's physically with the foods that we eat, or the quality of air, the quality of water, and also the quality of relationships that we have. So one of the things that I feel is actually quite unique about this system is this emotional care component, where women have a chance to really explore what is of value to them, and how that can how that self-care really can broadcast into other parts of their lives. And when you are able to get things into balance in a more refined way with greater grace, then the other parts of your life fall into place. And even when they don't, what happens is that we have the tools, we have very usable, practical tools that can be used in our everyday life to understand the imbalances that happen or the chaos that might come in. So that is one of the very many things that Radiant Lotus Qigong can do. We're taking care of breast health, uterine health, with particular emphasis, and also the whole human system, just more geared towards women's femininity, but also their hormonal balance. So, Lisa, I hope that helps Kathleen and everyone that's watching.
Yeah, I think so. It's a great place to start this conversation. We've got Cynthia then wondering, how long does it take to actually feel the effects of doing Qigong?
It's a good question, and for everyone it's different, but most times people who practice from even the first session will feel at the very least a relaxation response. And so they feel greater peace in the body, and because of that, that's going to, I guess you could say, infiltrate other parts of one's life. Relaxation response is incredibly important because when you're under stress and the body seizes up or contracts, and your breathing increases in speed and intensity, the relaxation response through either Qigong breathing or the movements will actually start to decompress that buildup of energy that creates stagnation. And so when the body is in this fight, flight, or freeze mode, there is going to be stagnation or blockages that form in really the most vulnerable parts of the body. Wherever you're vulnerable is where it will go to. And in women, it's often, as I mentioned earlier, in the breasts or in the uterus. And so that is, one of the important values that come out of this system. Lisa, hope that answers Cynthia's question.
Yeah, that actually leads perfectly into Jennifer's question. Jennifer says, my life has been very hectic and filled with a lot of emotional stress lately. Should I still take this course now, or is it better to wait until my life has calmed down?
In fact, it's a good question. And in fact, the more chaotic your life is, I would say the more you need this course. Not to be self-promoting, but when all hell breaks loose and everything is in disarray, how are you going to have the tools to pick up the pieces or consolidate your energy so that you're not fractured and you're not distracted by all the chaos? You can't be an effective contributor in your family or your society when you can't come back into balance. So that emotional balance is most critical, and the benefit, of course, the additional benefit being the physical toning of the body, the physical smooth movements that run through the body. And so the energy and the wholeness of the body comes into balance. And that's why probably more than ever, when you're under stress, these techniques, even the most basic technique, will help mitigate this kind of stress and emotional outbursts. Yeah, thank you, Jennifer, for that question.
Okay, and thank you, Daisy, for the response. That was very helpful. Now we've got a couple women here asking about doing this during pregnancy or even during menstruation. Let's tackle pregnancy first. How does this the Radiant Lotus Qigong help, or should you avoid it during pregnancy?
It's actually perfect for pregnancy, but we modify it as a woman's body gets bigger with the baby. There's a number of movements called Swimming Dragon, one of them called Swimming Dragon, where we're clearing the field around the belly to bring comfort to not only the woman, but the baby inside. There's a field outside the body that we call the Wei Qi field. And you could see it as when a woman is in balance, there's a smoothness around her body, her field. When there is interruption in that field or stress or inflammation in that field, it comes out like electrical charges, and you can feel it. If you're sensitive, you can actually feel that being discharged from a person. And so your baby will feel it as well, and that's why we want to clear the field through the movements that we do. Open up potential energy, new energy, or revitalized energy after you release these old spent energies. So this is very important for a woman who's carrying a child, going to have a baby while it's in her body. It's also, I would say, even more than that, there are modifications also for, we should say, when you're getting bigger and the body becomes heavier, there are a few counterindications. There are certain pressure points that we avoid. The same pressure point that would help with hot flashes will be counterindicated for women that are pregnant because it stimulates the uterine contractions. So we'll be going through that in the 7 weeks if that should come up. And also the movements and the sound healing also, some of the sound healing we'll be doing, it vibrates the cells and helps create movement from the inside out with the Tibetan sound healing. And on the other side of that is the shaking cupping routine that palpates the body with a cupped hand so that it's very gentle and doesn't hurt the baby or the body. It very gently pulls out stagnations from the tissues of the body and helps to expel it on the exterior skin and beyond. So these are perhaps just a few of the benefits, especially for pregnant women. We work more gently because a pregnant woman often is more sensitive, so her intuition is actually heightened to preserve life. And so she will actually know probably even more than I can tell her when something feels right or feels a little bit off. But definitely she'll be tonifying the body in preparation for giving birth, and also helping the baby to relax as she relaxes. So those are a few of the things, Lisa, that definitely would be helpful for pregnant women.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. We've got a completely different topic here. We've got a question here from Donna, who wants to know, what's the main difference between Tai Chi and Qigong?
Okay. Well, Qigong is a healing practice that's estimated to be about 5,000 years old. And Tai Chi, estimated, is about 1,500 years old only. It's a relative baby. But Tai Chi is also originally was conceived as a martial art. And so the application is very different. Although nowadays Tai Chi has become more of a health exercise if the martial application is not taught. So it's very different in intention. Over the years, the lines have blurred because, really the foundation of both the martial arts and the healing arts is Qigong, which is energy work, breath practice, self-massage, and also includes some pressure points and Tibetan sound healing in my situation with Radiant Lotus Qigong. So that hopefully gives you an idea of some of the differences, at least. Tai Chi, you need more space, especially if you're doing a moving form, which most Tai Chi is. Because it's conceived as a self-defense, there's more precision that's needed in the movements. Whereas Qigong, we brought Qigong to hospitals like Women's College Hospital in Toronto, or Mount Sinai, Johns Hopkins Hospital, where I've done some programs. And so what is amazing about Qigong is its simplicity. So even though you might not have graceful flowing movements, but you're willing to practice and find that grace within yourself. It's not even about the grace, it's about the flow of energy moving gracefully through your body. And in that process, you find that grace within yourself. When I was young, my nickname was Clumsy in Chinese, Lao Bao or Lo Tho, and Toisanese dialect. And, for me, I think that if it's brought, one of the many things it's brought is actually that sense of grace embodied in this body that I might never have thought at that age that I could find. And so it brings that into oneself. You're going to go through an understanding of correct posture. What kind of breathing helps most for mitigating stress? How to slow down the breath, how to even it out and gentle it so that the raggedness that is caused by stress will not infiltrate the body. And so for these reasons, Qigong is so helpful, and especially this woman's Qigong that focuses on the female anatomy, but also the female psyche. And not to say that emotions are, unique to women as opposed to men, but because of the hormonal fluxes that women go through during their cycles, or when their cycles stop, there is quite a vast difference in how the body, the human body, female body, starts to address situations. And that's why emotional situations, especially, that can derail people, push them off center, or cause anger or deep grief, or these very intense emotions can be recalibrated and rebalanced. And so there is a time for emotions such as this. There's, valid reasons for anger, valid reasons for grief. But, with this Qigong understanding, it's to find how to manage that more peaceably so that it doesn't cause undue stress in the body. So when we're able to when we're able to not dwell on the things that we can't change, then we have an opportunity to create a ripple effect in this morphic field around us that is more balancing and more stabilizing. So often, I often talk about vertical alignment and neutral compassion, creating stable lead energy. And this is a kind of foundational concept in Radiant Lotus Women's Qigong. And it's because when we are stable, we create stability. When we are stable within ourselves and at peace within ourselves, we can send that ripple of harmonious balance into the world. And if we're not that, and we send the opposite into the world, then what will happen is that seed gets dropped into the still pond, and that starts to magnify and really, influence others in a negative way. And so that's why I often ask people to really pay attention to what's happening in your own environment. Never mind the bigger world. The bigger world, yes, of course, we're going to get involved however we can, when we can. But look at your most immediate environment in your home, in your immediate community, and what qualities are you bringing in? What qualities are you allowing to dominate in your life? Or what qualities within yourself are you growing and vibrating out so that it touches other lives in a way that is life affirming? And that's the opportunity in this practice, is to, have different tools in your toolkit that can not only bring, really refined physical health, but also help manage the emotions that are sure to arise, sometimes through the monthly fluxes, but also when you're encountering a situation that might be very critical or dangerous or in a crisis. There's so much around us that can influence us in a negative way. And the opportunity is, how do we turn that around and shift things so that we become a very stable lead energy? And by leadership, I don't mean that we are imposing our power or will over another. But when you're stable, you don't have a need to change others. You can be in this place of peace and emanate and broadcast, in a sense, this way of being by your very presence. And that is always my hope for the students that come to Radiant Lotus Qigong. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea of what it can do, and really how different it is than Tai Chi practice, which again, at its conception was a martial art by martial families like the Yang family, the Chen family, Wu or Sun style. These were forms that were created to encapsulate the, you could say, hidden martial agendas within the form, and also very health enhancing, and can increase qi flow and blood flow. But its primary directive was not for healing defense so much as for martial defense. And this is what Qigong, the hardest thing about Qigong really is that the way it's pronounced or written, many people don't know that the Q in China is pronounced as a CH. So often you'll see that it's spelled CHI, QUNG or GONG. And in this one, I've taken the traditional Chinese understanding of it and written it as QIGONG. So just a little bit of background on that, so you understand that it's not Qi Gong or Qi Gong, although in Korea and in Japan they pronounce it as Qi Gong. So just a little bit of background that I hope helps with your understanding and research of Qigong.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. And if you're just joining us, we're here with Daisy Lee learning about her upcoming course, Radiant Lotus Qigong Practice for Women, which begins Tuesday, July 10th. And you can log on to qigongforwomen.net for all the details and to register. And we have plenty of questions here waiting. In fact, we've got several questions from older women. So let's devote a little time to that. Let's start with a question here from Susan, which has sort of speaks for the tone that a lot of them are saying. She says, can Qigong help an older woman post-60s improve her health, or has the window of opportunity closed for her? So many of the older women who are writing in questions, they've sort of just given up. They don't know if anything can help. They're just battling health issues, menopause problems. So let's devote a little time to that.
Yes, most definitely. Well, I'm in my second spring, and I can tell you that the Radiant Lotus Women's Qigong has been incredibly helpful, not only for me, but the majority of students who are in their second spring or their menopause years when they're completed with their period. And why we call this second spring, again, is because it's a whole new opportunity to reinvent oneself and one's health through this practice. So one of the things that you will definitely learn is how to either reduce or altogether stop the hot flashes. And I don't make that offer lightly. It's something that you have to do and practice, hopefully weekly or even daily, so that you understand how you can help yourself. Lisa, you were saying that many of the women were asking, well, what happens after 60? I'm not quite there yet, but in fact, many of my students are of the menopause or later years. I can tell you that one of the great things about the shaking and cupping routine is that it actually helps women to find blockages in their body, at the same time to actually increase bone density. And so the act of cupping and palpating the body through the specific regions of the body that we do is one of the key practices that we do. Women always report that they feel more invigorated, their body is more toned, they feel like their body is coming back to life. And so even if someone who is in their 80s, I have students that are in their 80s and 90s as well, that when they do the practice, their vitality increases. Qigong is actually seen as a longevity exercise. And so you're going to be learning exercises that actually increase the smooth flow of energy, unblocks the channels if there's blockages in the channels. By that age, we often have something that starts to reveal itself, and the body talks to you. So if it's talking to you and saying, I need your help, I need you to do something to improve my life and improve the quality of my life, I would say that Qigong answers that call. And so beyond, densing up the bones and moving the energy, clearing away stress and opening up the body to new potential in the second half of your life, Qigong definitely, is able to help relax and decompress stress. So I really hope that women, and you probably see from some of the women that have taken the course already, that they have been helped in these kinds of ways, that their quality of their skin, the youthfulness in their energy, in their radiance, starts to develop more and more. And so even if you're in your 80s or 90s, this is possible. And to have vitality at any age, I think, is huge, huge potential with Qigong. No other exercise, I would say, does what Qigong can do. And I think this is important to note because in certain types of aerobic exercise, although it gets the heart rate going and moving and you're flushing out some of the toxins and invigorating in a different way, as we get older, we need to know how to conserve energy for healing and kind of balance what goes out and refuel in a different way than we did when we were young. And so most definitely, as we get older, the more time passes, the greater the wisdom and the opportunity for wisdom to infuse the body. We infuse the body with breath, and we also infuse the body with, with Qi, which is even beyond breath. These practices really flower ourselves into our second spring so that we're even more capable, even more in harmony with what is around us. We start to let go of the things that no longer matter, that might have mattered in our youth, and it changes when you're in your second spring and as you gain wisdom over the years. And so I do hope that you'll have a chance to try and join me in this program because of all those wonderful things that can happen. Thank you, everyone, for that question. I know myself because I'm 56, and seeing the changes in my body, how strong, probably stronger now than I might have felt 15 years ago. Maybe even longer, you could say. I certainly have a different sense of life now at 56 than I ever did when I was in my 20s. And so I feel that the wisdom has been grown and is still continuing to grow. I can't wait till I'm 100, as some of my teachers are, over 100 actually. And the chance to feel that vibrancy even at that age, to me, is really exciting. But for now, we'll focus on the 50s, 60s, and 70s, 80s. I venture to guess that there's even a third spring. They don't talk about it in Chinese medicine, but the third spring being probably in the mid-70s and going into our senior years, where in the past most people would think, 70s, 80s, they almost have this expectation that their body is going to break down. But I don't have that expectation, and I feel that and trust, actually, that through my practice, that by the time I hit 75, I'm hoping to be even more vibrant than I am at 56. I think it's possible. It really depends on what you believe to be true and how you manage your energy at this time in your life, in present time. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on that, Lisa.
Okay, great, thanks. What about hot flashes then? Can you talk a little bit about how maybe this the Radiant Lotus Qigong can help with those?
It's one of the great things that this program does, Lisa, is help to mitigate hot flashes. I would say, I don't know if there's probably been one or two that said they had very complicated situations, but the majority of women that have taken this program, one of the big things that they talk about is the slowing down or elimination of hot flashes. And so it's done through a couple of ways. One is pressure points that helps to, you could say, alleviate the liver fire. And when the liver is blocked, there's a tendency for energy to push up into the heart, into the face, and you start having these swells of hot flashes. And it doesn't need to be that way. You can use a couple of pressure points that will descend this energy. You'll get some ideas about nutritional recommendations to help with that as well. But there's a movement that probably some people have seen through, if you've been on other programs before, called showering Qi. And it's a very simple technique, a very simple movement that helps to alleviate and reduce the heat in the body that's trying to push up. So when you do this regularly, you just stop having hot flashes. And so it can be very well controlled. You will start to learn as your body comes into balance through practice of the movements or the pressure points or even the Tibetan sounds. As things start to equalize, everything starts to rebalance. So it's not just for hot flashes, but for greater vitality in general, and the smooth movement of Qi or energy running through, coursing through the body unobstructed. And so that's the advantage of having a practice that particularly addresses these kind of women's concerns. I don't know if men have hot flashes. That's something has never been brought up to me. I guess unless you consider high blood pressure a hot flash. And actually there's a movement that helps to reduce high blood pressure, which is the same movement that is used for women having hot flashes. So, there's something occasionally even for men in this program.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, looking at the clock here, we have time for a few more questions, but before we take those, I want to give a few details about the course itself. People are asking about that as well. Once again, it's called the Radiant Lotus Qigong Practice for Women. And this is going to be just a fascinating 7-week journey under Daisy's expert guidance, where you'll wake up your body's immunity and discharge stagnant Qi to dissolve stress, heal illness, and prevent disease and get rid of those hot flashes. The 7-week course takes place on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific, starting Tuesday, July 10th. And if you can't join us live, that's fine. You won't miss the teachings. You'll receive audio and video replays, transcripts, and all course handouts on your course homepage. Also, I'd like to remind you that we offer a no-risk money-back guarantee on our courses, giving a full 2 weeks until July 24th in this case to make sure that you absolutely love it. And as an added option, all participants are welcome to connect in a private Facebook community group so you can stay connected with one another. Also, everyone who registers receives the Radiant Lotus Qigong Practice for Women bonus collection. First, you'll receive a video dialogue with John P. Milton, hosted by Sharon Rose, entitled Cultivating the Way of Nature, Inner, Outer, and True. Next, you'll get an audio talk with Daisy Lee called Empowering Our Third Ear, the Power of Deep Listening in Qigong. Then you'll receive a video dialogue with Daisy Lee, hosted by Sharon Rose, entitled Radiant Lotus Qigong, a Health and Empowerment Practice for Women. And you'll also get an audio dialogue with Prune Harris, hosted by Dondi Dahlin, called Energy Medicine and Womb Wisdom, Healing the Womb to Give Birth to Our Power and Vitality. Plus, you'll be entitled to a $10 discount on a membership with the National Qigong Association. And when you register by midnight Pacific on Saturday, July 6th, you'll receive an extra gift. And this is an audio talk with Daisy Lee entitled Blossoming into Your Potential Through Radiant Lotus Women's Qigong. And there's a voice in the back of my head saying, I said Tuesday, but I think this actually begins on Wednesday. Let me look at my calendar here. July 10th is a Wednesday. So I apologize for that. It is starting on Wednesday. We'll just erase all of that in our minds. So before we go back into questions, let me ask Daisy, what are you most looking forward to sharing in your upcoming course?
Lisa, one of the things that I find and have found most compelling about this program is the sense of community with the women from around the world. I never expected that there would be such a sisterhood and such a beautifully bonded group. And part of it is the weekly teaching and exercises that we do for, almost 2 months. But also, hearing the stories of other women as they practice, the questions and enlivening that happens as they practice. That's one of the greatest gifts, I think, is this sense of community and friendship, sometimes potentially lifetime friends that result from this community. So I'm really moved by that and look forward to this next round. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Well, let's go ahead and get back into questions here. We've talked about women's health issues, but we've got people asking about just general health issues. And I know that you can't dispense medical information, but let's just sort of touch on some various topics to see, can Qigong help with them? Like, for example, we've got a question here from Susan who asks, will this course help long-term severe anxiety disorder?
I definitely think so, Susan, because I can say that a number of my students, when I was teaching live on Kauai, was that they had been on anti-anxiety medications, antidepressant medications, and they were able to no longer need those medications. One also talked about having almost an addiction to alcohol, and all of that dissipated. And so they used the practice as, the way to help them find balance with all the emotional turmoil that they were going through. So definitely it will help with these areas.
Okay, wonderful. So we've got a question here from Mira who wonders, can Qigong help to actually prevent health problems?
Oh, most definitely. In fact, Qigong is probably best used as prevention. So before the hot flashes, before, or during, the problem periods, before these things start to become a problem, you want to take care of this. And so when your body the energy is moving smoothly, and you're able to have greater intuition and sensitivity to what's going on inside the body, then the practice itself will often change things around before it ever gets to the crisis point. And so, women who, for example, had fibrocystic breast disease or who had cysts in their breasts, they were able to manage this and kind of mitigate the very serious problems because they knew of this prevention method. And so I would recommend that if you are beginning to have signs of potential problems in the body, that you actually start this practice sooner than later. And we can do prevention oftentimes a lot easier than we can do treatment. This can be used for treatment with modifications, but I always recommend take care of your health while you have it. And when you get the first signs that there's trouble, this is really the best time to start and not have those things happen. Yeah. And so, the tuning into one's own energy, to one's own body, because we live in this body, we need to really take care of it. We take care of our homes, we take care of our cars, our material things, but sometimes we forget that this body is the primary vehicle that we're traveling in, the primary home that we live in. And so we really need to honor this sacred vessel and do it now. Take care of yourself.
All right. Beautifully stated. Thank you. We've got a follow-up question here from Leslie about hot flashes. She wants to know, in Chinese medicine or Qigong thinking, is there understood to be some purpose for hot flashes? And do you have any sense of how long it might take for me to practice or play with showering Qi to see a significant reduction in my hot flashes?
Okay, well, on one hand, there's this idea that the heat is used as a alchemical element to actually burn up the old. If some of that can be true. So if you think of it that way, it gives it a nicer book cover to what a hot flash is. But but if you see it, on the other hand, and understand that when a body is in balance, you don't have continued expressions of that flaring heat. And so we need to help the body come back into balance so that it doesn't consume the whole house. It's one thing if it warms the house, right? Like a nice fireplace when you need the heat. But if it's going to be so scorching that it burns down the whole house, then we're in trouble. And so how to understand this in using that analogy is, it's always about harmonious balance. It's about finding a way so that we don't need to always depend on medications, take pills or pharmaceuticals to mitigate these things. We can do it naturally through Qigong practice. If after our time together you don't find that it helps, then okay, then try something else. But I always recommend a more natural method that is self-empowering, so that you take care of yourself and take the pressure off the medical system, in a sense, so that you learn and empower yourself rather than empowering the bank account of corporate interests. I hope that's not a bad thing to say. I just feel, pretty committed to helping women empower themselves. And truly, when we have good health, vibrant health, everything in our life changes. And then we are true contributors to our families and our communities. So I do hope that helps with your understanding.
Okay, thank you. We've got a couple different people. Let me see if I can sort of capsulize what they're saying. We've been talking about women becoming older and sort of regaining our power. And there's questions about, if we're going to go off track here. What do you feel women are unempowered? That's when they get older. That's one of the reasons that youth is so valued. Youth and beauty, and only young women are valuable, because older women with their wisdom know a little bit, and maybe the powers that be want them to shut up. So maybe that's why we're told we aren't valuable when we're older.
That's interesting. I would say that it's a different perspective in China, or maybe in at least in China, I would think. In my family, wisdom, and in most Chinese families, I would say, wisdom and elderliness is seen with, is upheld. And the older we are, the more we have lived through, the more that our life is honored. And so the grandmothers in the nai nais and the nanas, the great wisdom keepers, we see them as wisdom keepers. And so with age comes that. In your youth, you have perhaps explosive energy and a certain type of vitality, but it's untrained. It's not balanced always. And so we being the Eastern mindset, sees the senior years as some of the best of our lives. We may not have the type of big energy and you could maybe say attractiveness of the same youthful skin, or that different type of Jing energy that comes from the providence of the youth. I've heard this before, that youth is wasted on the young. And if we had the wisdom that we have now implanted into that young body, wouldn't that be an amazing thing? But to truly honor this life and to see it as a cultivation and a refinement of oneself as we grow and mature, I think is the way I would like to look at it. Emotional intelligence, for instance, is not something that always happens in the young. There are the rare occasions when someone seems to be born with this kind of intelligence and intuition, but a lot of times the young energy, which is almost like a yang energy, Y-A-N-G, which can be very powerful and appealing on a surface level, but there are times that depth has not been developed, and that's where the wisdom keepers come in. That you've heard of the crone, the idea of the crone. Well, that's perceived as this, ugly old crone, with this creaky voice. But I think that it really symbolizes a different type of evolution with a woman who is empowered and unafraid of embracing who she is, whatever year that is, whether she's young or as she grows and matures and finds wisdom through the years and self-understanding through the years, that changes how we live our lives. Not only how we live our lives, but how we are perceived in life. And so there's a great saying behind me: the lotus rises through the mud uncontaminated. It doesn't mean that we are untouched by life, but the second part of this poem is from my dear friend Lorelei Chang, is presenting its resilience without arrogance. And so even as we evolve and become wiser, we still maintain humility. We know what we're about. We've lived long enough to understand what is of value and what to cast aside because it doesn't matter. And so to have humility means not to have arrogance, I think. And it's a life project to find oneself at the center of situations. You can become really big, and yet if you have arrogance, you've lost touch with the meaning of being human and humane with an E at the end. So in our self-care practice, we are learning all of these things. Some get it faster than others and incorporate it sooner than others, but it is this process that is important. And if we're on that path, we are already halfway there because we have dedicated time and energy to growing ourselves, nurturing ourselves, and empowering, true empowerment, which comes from the inside and goes out. So thank you for that, Lisa, and everyone. I really appreciate, these great questions and how we can expand together and grow ourselves together through practice. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And looking at the clock, we are out of time. This has been, as usual, just a wonderful hour. I want to thank our viewers for being with us today and for all of your questions. Once again, the Radiant Lotus Qigong practice for women starts Wednesday, not Tuesday, Wednesday, July 10th. And again, you can visit qigongforwomen.net to learn more and to register. So Daisy, before we go, do you have any final words for our viewers?
Only that I very much look forward to seeing you on Wednesdays for the next 7 weeks starting next week, and that I'm so honored that you're interested in these teachings that have been carried forth by my Tibetan, Chinese, and Western teachers, and that I'm more than anything looking forward to this community sharing, because I feel that we are not alone and that together we can make changes in the world by starting with ourselves. So thank you so much, and I look forward to meeting you.
All right. Thank you again, Daisy. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you today. And once again, I want to thank everyone who joined us. On behalf of all of us at the Shift Network, I wish you well and look forward to having you on this course or perhaps another one in the future. Have a great day, everyone.